I love this question. So in the environmental field, many people enter conversations with really strong previously held notions about what is good versus bad for the environment, what even is the environment, and what it means to address environmental issues, right? So I do this exercise in a number of my classes where early on, before I've sort of critiqued this, I ask students to close their eyes and imagine, we could do a mountain biker, we could do an environmentalist, right? And so they close their eyes and then I say, okay, honestly, who is it that you're picturing, right? And more often than not, it's a white guy wearing Patagonia clothes, hugging a tree, maybe. In fact, for many years, the first Google image response to environmentalist was a guy literally hugging a tree, right? And so there's this image around who that is. Maybe they are involved in the Sierra Club. And then we ask the question, like, okay, so why do you have that image? Where does that come from? And how does that affect the way that you think about the environment, right? How would it affect the way you think about the environment differently if you instead imagined a kid in a city, right? Or an indigenous person, right, fighting against the Dakota Access Pipeline? Why are those images not informing your worldview, right? And so I think that sort of structured navel gazing that's allows students to acknowledge that their perspectives are formed by things, right? That they're not innate. And to start to ask questions about why they hold those particular perspectives. So I think we can't have these kinds of conversations without acknowledging that, hey, these beliefs that I see as facts are actually, first of all, they're actually beliefs, and that they're formed because of the social and cultural context that we all live in. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's worth acknowledging. And so one of the ways that I do that is in a big intro class in our department in environmental studies, we ask students to identify and articulate their own environmental ethic, right? So many students, and this was true of me at that age, sort of just grew up thinking of themselves as environmentalists, as people who care about plants and animals. And so we really ask them to do a little more self-reflection and identify, well, what is it that you care about and why is that the case? And do you consider humans to be part of this plant and animal system that you care so much about, and which humans and why? And hey, can we actually give names to that? Because there's this whole field of environmental ethics that helps us understand how we value certain things and how we make decisions about what's right and wrong. And so I think that sort of introspection is really important, to come to the table with something and to come to the table with an understanding that, like, your perspectives aren't absolute, right? And that they're contingent. And so because of that, I think, especially in this environmental ethics example that I just gave, many students end up in a different place where they started. And I don't think that's because their values have fundamentally changed, but that I think instead it's that we are so infrequently asked to really understand and articulate what we believe. And so that's a fun way to get at that. One of the other preconceived notions that students often bring to the classroom in environmental studies is this idea that if only everyone else knew what they knew, or what we as environmental studies scholars and burgeoning scholars know about the environment, then we wouldn't have any environmental problems. And so this is a notion that requires a lot of reflection and navel gazing, but also some intervention by some really great research around social psychology. So the framing that students offer in this way is really problematic. And it's problematic because it assumes that people don't know anything, right? And it also assumes that facts guide values. And in reality, that's not how it works. So in a number of my classes, we explore research by Kahan and others in social psychology that suggests actually that knowledge does not inform, in particular, people's perspectives or beliefs around climate change. So actually, if a person believes that climate change is some scam that, the government scientists made up or something like that, giving that person more scientific evidence is only going to make them dig in their heels more. Similarly, someone who feels very strongly about climate change as being anthropogenic and has, fought all their life for issues around climate change, right? You could give them all of these facts don't exist, but you could give them all the facts in the world suggesting that climate change isn't as bad as they think it is, and they will reject those facts because facts aren't what guide people's values and beliefs. Largely social norms are. And so that insight is really important for students on this journey and in this process of being able to have conversations with people across difference, right? So this idea that, okay, it's not that they just don't have the facts, it's that these other folks who might hold very different perspectives do so because they have very different social circles, right? And so that insight in particular, I think, is really paradigm shifting for a lot of students. It was paradigm shifting for me when I started to think about that. And it allows for more conversation to happen because no longer is the conversation about throwing scientific facts at each other. Instead, it's about consensus building. So, okay, you reject the notion of climate change as being human caused, and I think it's human caused. We all care about flooding and we don't want our communities to be flooded. How can we have a conversation about that? Not ignoring the facts, but focusing on shared values and consensus. And so those insights from social psychology can really help students, and they help myself navigate some of those difficult conversations.